The world had already ended. Cities had collapsed. Governments had vanished. Communication networks fizzled into silence. What remained of civilization now lived underground, hidden in shadows, moving in fear of the ever-hungry dead that roamed the surface. In the western ruins of what used to be a sprawling metropolis, a reinforced train depot had become a last sanctuary. Steel walls, motion sensor fences, and solar power kept the place running, barely. It was called Outpost Haven, and within its rusting heart, only 100 humans remained. They weren't soldiers. They weren't scientists. They were what was left. And they were running out of time. Rain lashed the depot roof as Commander Rhea Dawson stared at the cracked map table in the operations room. Her hair was tied back, her uniform patched together from old military gear. She looked more tired than anyone had ever seen her. "We can't hold this place forever," she muttered. Across from her sat Malik, a former field engineer, now the depot's head of power systems. "We've got 3 working generators, 2 water purifiers, and 1 drone. No reinforcements. No trade. And no ammo resupply for at least 3 months. Rhea rubbed her temples. "Then we need to make a move before the dead get smarter." He looked at her. "You think they're getting smarter?" Rhea didn't answer. She didn't need to. In the lower barracks, Sienna, age 14, stared at the ceiling of her bunk, counting the seconds between each flicker of the emergency light. Her parents had died during the northern collapse. Since then, she'd trained under Jonas, the grizzled marksman who now slept one bunk over with a shotgun resting on his chest. "Jonas," she whispered. He opened one eye. "What if we don't win?" He paused before answering. "Then we make sure we don't lose today." Outpost Haven's last working drone had been launched that morning. Programmed to scan the surrounding 5-mile radius, it buzzed silently through the gray sky, capturing infrared signatures and motion patterns. Its footage revealed something disturbing. The infected weren't dispersing anymore. They were grouping. Forming lines. Organizing. The data made no sense, but the images didn't lie. What used to be mindless hordes were now forming patrol patterns, clearing routes, circling known survivor areas. And worst of all, they were slowly, very slowly, closing in on Haven. By nightfall, the council met. Only 5 people, Rhea, Malik, Jonas, a medical lead named Dr. Kieran Liao, and Eve, an ex-cartographer who now ran reconnaissance missions. They sat in silence as the drone footage looped again. Malik finally spoke. "They're adapting. Not individually. But as a swarm. A system. Like a hive." Dr. Liao leaned forward. "That shouldn't be possible. The virus doesn't allow for that kind of communication between hosts." Rhea snapped, "Then tell the virus it's breaking its own rules." Everyone stared at the screen. It showed an overhead view of the city. Infected clusters were marking specific streets with blood trails, herding stragglers, steering movement. "They're not hunting us," Eve whispered. "They're studying us." At dawn, an alarm blared across Haven. Zone 3 breach. Main tunnel compromised. Casualties, 3. Jonas was the first to arrive at the breach point, a collapsed mine shaft now rigged with barbed wire and flamethrowers. But somehow, the infected had pushed a corpse into the flame sensor, triggering a misfire and burning out the turret system. The opening was vulnerable. He found blood. Human blood. But no bodies. Sienna had disappeared. And so had 2 others, one from the kitchen crew, another from the outer patrol. Rhea called a lockdown. The depot's steel gates slammed shut. Power diverted to interior lights and surveillance. But it was already too late. A small infection cluster had gotten inside. Not through brute force. Through manipulation. Rhea gathered the survivors in the main hall. The youngest stood beside the oldest. Some armed, some trembling. All silent. "We're down to 97, Rhea announced, her voice calm but cold. "We can't rely on the walls anymore. We have to fight smarter. Move faster. Think beyond survival. We start recon missions at sunrise. I want teams prepped tonight." "Where do we go?" someone asked. Eve answered before Rhea could. "There's a radio tower to the north. Old military relay. If we can reach it and power it, we might find others. We might not be alone." Someone laughed nervously. "Or we might lead the infected straight to them." Jonas spoke then. "Better to die searching for hope than wait for death behind steel." That night, as the survivors prepared for what could be their last stand or first step toward something greater, the camera feeds showed something strange in the distance. Torches. Dozens of them. Carried by infected. Like a parade of fire moving through the streets. And behind them, walking slow and tall. A human figure. Alive. Commanding the dead. The torches burned like a trail of stars against the crumbling night skyline. From the rooftop of Outpost Haven, Commander Rhea Dawson peered through her cracked binoculars, her breath caught in her chest. Dozens of infected marched slowly toward the depot, but that wasn't what froze her blood. It was the man walking at the center of them. He wore a long, black coat torn at the sleeves, his face pale under flickering flames. Around him, the undead moved with unnatural coordination, forming a protective circle, not to attack him, but to shield him. "What the hell am I looking at?" Jonas asked, crouched beside her, rifle aimed low. "Someone controlling them," Rhea replied grimly. "And he's coming for us." Inside the command room, Malik and Eve studied the security feeds. Each camera picked up the same terrifying pattern. Infected moving in formations, clearing debris from alleys, covering each other as they advanced. It was military, almost tactical. "These aren't normal infected anymore," Malik muttered. Eve pointed at a monitor. "He doesn't flinch near them. They don't attack him. I've never seen anything like it." Just then, the sound of static hissed through the depot's silent radio system. A voice, distorted and slow, crackled through. "You have taken what is mine. I have come to return the favor." Silence. Then the torches vanished from view, as if swallowed by the darkness itself. The next morning, Outpost Haven was locked down tighter than ever. Rhea paced in front of the assembled survivors in the depot's atrium. "We now know the enemy is evolving. There's someone out there controlling them. We don't know how or why, but we know this: if we stay here, we're sitting ducks." Jonas stepped forward, holding a map. "This tower," he said, pointing north, "used to be a military outpost. We get the transmitter working, we might call for outside help. That's our only shot." Eve added, "I've been up that route once. The tunnels underneath are risky, but faster than the streets. We can be there in 2 days." Rhea nodded. "Then we move at dawn. 10 volunteers. Rest stay to defend Haven. If we're not back in 5 days, you make a run for it. Head west." That night, Sienna sat in the depot's greenhouse with her cat, Twitch, curled in her lap. The silence outside felt wrong, not the peaceful kind, but the kind before something bad happened. She looked up as Jonas entered, sitting beside her. "You don't think they'll make it back, do you?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer at first. "Then, they will. Because they have to." By dawn, the recon team was ready: Rhea, Jonas, Eve, Malik, and 6 others. Each carried minimal supplies, weapons, water, and a map. Their exit was silent, a narrow service tunnel on the depot's far side. As the steel hatch closed behind them, the other survivors watched, hoping they weren't saying goodbye for good. The tunnels beneath the city were tight, wet, and rotting. Every step squelched under years of abandoned sewage and decay. Rats skittered in the dark. Twice they passed corpses too far gone to identify. But they kept moving. 3 hours in, they reached the first junction, a collapsed metro station. Malik scouted ahead, flashlight bouncing off shattered tile and broken vending machines. He paused near an old stairwell, then froze. Footprints. Fresh. Human. Rhea joined him, crouching to examine them. Could be another survivor group, she said. Eve shook her head. Or him. They pushed forward carefully, flashlights off, weapons ready. Then, somewhere in the darkness, a whisper. Followed by another. And another. Words, soft and twisted, echoing off the stone. Leave this place. Jonas spun, flashlight flashing over nothing. They weren't alone. Suddenly, shrieks erupted from above, half-human, half-animal sounds, as infected dropped down from an overhead shaft. Unlike normal zombies, these weren't slow. They were fast, coordinated, and targeted specific members of the group like predators zeroing in on prey. One survivor, Taylor, screamed as 2 infected dragged him into the shadows. His flashlight bounced once, then was gone. Move! Rhea shouted. Gunfire lit the tunnels. Malik lobbed a homemade flash grenade down a corridor, sending the undead scattering, momentarily stunned. The team pushed forward, stumbling through a collapsed doorway and barricading it behind them with debris. Chest heaving, Rhea looked around. They had lost 3 people. And they were barely halfway to the tower. Meanwhile, back at Haven, Sienna stood at the edge of the depot wall, staring at the horizon. The torches were back. But this time, they weren't heading toward the depot. They were circling it. Forming a perimeter. Trapping them in. And just beyond the firelight, the man in black stood with arms outstretched, like a preacher before a sermon, as the infected knelt silently at his feet. Outpost Haven was no longer surrounded. It was encased. From all sides, firelight flickered through the gloom. Dozens of torches marked the outer ring, not for illumination, but for intimidation. Inside, the remaining 87 survivors kept low, watching the shadows stretch longer as the sun began to fall. The infected didn't attack. They didn't even move. They just waited. And at the center of the perimeter stood the man in black, tall, still, like a ghost commanding the storm. Sienna watched from the sniper tower, her heart racing. Why aren't they coming closer? Dr. Liao, standing behind her, whispered, because they don't need to. Deep below the city, the recon team was on the move again. Rhea, Jonas, Malik, Eve, and the others had made it through the initial tunnel ambush, but 3 teammates were gone, and the clock was ticking. Every corridor they crossed seemed older than the last. Rot and dust filled the air. Above them, creaks echoed through the concrete, as if the city's bones were breaking with every step. They stopped at a junction that led upward. This is it, Eve whispered. It connects to the maintenance ladder that leads to the radio tower roof. Rhea nodded. We push in fast, no stopping. Jonas, rear guard. Let's go. The climb was steep. The metal rungs creaked. But when they finally reached the top, morning light filtered through the broken panels above. They were back on the surface, barely. The tower loomed ahead like a skeleton, half its structure missing from age and attack. But the transmitter still stood at the peak, untouched. Back at Haven, the air had turned heavy. People whispered. Children clung to parents. A woman named Mara approached the main hall doors and tried calling out to the figures in the distance. We don't want to fight. Leave us alone. No answer. But the infected didn't need to respond. They lit a second ring of fire, this one smaller, tightening their trap. Eve's assistant, Nolan, looked out the window and whispered, "They're starving us out." Dr. Liao nodded. "They're learning from siege warfare. This isn't infection. This is war." At the tower, Malik connected the transmitter's cables, his hands moving fast despite the cold. "We've got a shot," he said. "But the batteries are too low. It'll take 30 minutes of solar exposure before we can send a strong enough signal." "We don't have 30 minutes, Rhea snapped, scanning the horizon. And she was right. In the distance, shapes were emerging, infected, drawn by movement, sound, scent. "They're on us." Jonas lifted his rifle and took position on the tower's stairwell. "I'll hold them as long as I can." Eve looked at him. "You won't survive." "I don't plan to." But Rhea stepped forward. "We all survive, or none of this means anything." She handed Jonas a flare gun. "If we fall, fire this toward Haven. Let them know what's coming." Back at Haven, Sienna was in the greenhouse again, watching Twitch sleep. But her eyes kept darting to the radio, hoping for a sign. Then, static. And then, a voice. "To anyone listening, this is Outpost Echo Tower, survivors remain, requesting assistance, repeat, requesting." The signal cut. Sienna's heart pounded. She jumped from her chair and ran toward the central hall. "They're alive. They're alive," she shouted. They reached the tower. The entire depot stirred. For the first time in days, hope spread like wildfire. Some cheered. Others cried. But outside, the man in black smiled. At the tower, infected began swarming the base. Malik yelled, 10 more minutes. Eve tossed a homemade charge down the stairwell, blowing back the first wave. Rhea and Jonas opened fire. Every bullet counted. Every second mattered. Then they heard it, the transmitter humming. Malik grinned. "It's ready. We can send the full signal." Rhea grabbed the mic and spoke clearly, firmly. "This is Commander Rhea Dawson of Outpost Haven. We are under siege. Survivors remain. Requesting any military or civilian support. Please respond. Coordinates transmitting now." A pause. Then a crackled reply. "Signal received, stand by." Their eyes widened. Someone was out there. Back at Haven, the ring of infected moved. The siege was ending, but not because they were retreating. Because they were preparing to charge. The man in black raised one arm. Dozens of infected moved with him. Then, he lowered it. And the final assault began. Inside the greenhouse, Sienna grabbed Twitch and sprinted to the armory. People screamed as infected slammed against the depot walls. Gunshots rang out. Dr. Liao handed her a small radio. "Keep listening. If they make it back, open the east gate." She looked up at him. "What if they don't?" He didn't answer. At the tower, Rhea looked at the growing horde below and whispered, "Let's finish this." Jonas fired the flare. It shot high into the sky, a bright red streak against the ash-gray clouds, the signal that war had truly begun. The sky turned a bruised gray as the sun struggled to rise. Inside Outpost Haven, the walls shook with every impact. The infected had launched their full assault. Screams echoed through the hallways, and muzzle flashes lit up every dark corner. Barricades held, barely. But with every wave, more of the defenders fell. Sienna crouched behind an overturned table, clutching Twitch to her chest, radio in one hand and a pistol in the other. Blood pounded in her ears as infected smashed through the greenhouse doors. She raised the pistol. A sharp crack rang out. The zombie collapsed mid-lunge. Dr. Liao stood behind it, panting, his rifle smoking. "We don't run," he said, voice hoarse. "Not now. Atop the crumbling Echo Tower, Rhea and her team had held out longer than anyone expected. Malik finished transmitting the emergency coordinates just as the last of their ammunition ran dry. "They're coming," Jonas growled, eyes on the stairwell. "I can hear them." "We don't have time to climb down," Eve snapped. "They'll cut us off." Malik pointed across to a building half-collapsed but connected by a broken skybridge. "We jump. That rooftop leads to the outer ruins. We might lose them in the alleys." Rhea looked at the building, then at her exhausted team. "Let's go." Back at Haven, the main gate splintered under pressure. Mara and 4 others stood ready with Molotovs, waiting for the exact moment. "Wait for it, wait." Crash. The gate burst open. Infected poured in. "Now!" The firebombs exploded in a wall of flame, igniting dozens of the dead. The air reeked of burning flesh, but still they came. Some ran into the fire. Others found other paths. "They're adapting again," Dr. Liao shouted. "They're avoiding direct attacks." As the team fell back to the central atrium, a flare lit the sky outside, red and high, arcing eastward. Sienna saw it from the second floor. "They're alive. The team's alive." Rhea and the survivors raced across the unstable skybridge. Below, infected howled and scrambled, but they couldn't climb. The bridge groaned under their weight. Halfway across, the metal snapped. Jonas lunged forward, catching Eve's arm as she slipped. "Don't let go. I can't hold." Rhea grabbed her other arm and, with a surge of strength, yanked her back up. The bridge gave way behind them as they reached the rooftop. Dust and debris clouded the air, but they didn't stop. Rhea pointed toward the east. "This way." Back at Haven, the infected were inside the depot. Sienna and Mara helped lead survivors through maintenance tunnels below the greenhouse. Dr. Liao stayed behind with a small group, holding a final line with only 2 rifles and a bag of pipe bombs. "If they break through," he said calmly, "don't wait. Blow the tunnel and keep moving." Mara's hands trembled. "You'll die." He nodded. "I know." He closed the hatch behind them. On the surface, Rhea's team reached a barricaded supply station near the railway yard. It looked abandoned, but Eve quickly spotted tripwires. Someone had been here recently. They entered cautiously. Inside, a man in a bloodied uniform raised a shotgun, eyes wild. "Stay back. We're not infected," Rhea said quickly. "We sent the emergency signal." He hesitated, then lowered his weapon. "I heard it." Command responded. "They're sending evac choppers, 1 hour, North Ridge. But they won't land unless the area's secure." "Then we clear it," Rhea said. "Let's go." Underground, Sienna and the others reached the east access tunnel. Behind them, the distant sound of an explosion rumbled. Mara wiped her eyes. That was Liao. "He saved us," Sienna said quietly. "He gave us a chance." They emerged into the daylight, only to see the infected had anticipated this. They were waiting. Hundreds of them. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from the north. Rhea's group arrived, flanking the horde. Malik hurled flash grenades while Eve cut through the side with a stolen truck. The roar of the engine split the chaos. "Get in," she screamed. Sienna and Mara pulled the others into the truck bed while Jonas covered them from the roof. Bullets, fire, and screams blended into a single wave of noise. They escaped, barely, tearing through alleys toward the North Ridge. Atop the ridge, the wind howled. In the distance, they heard it, rotors. A black chopper descended slowly toward a cleared landing zone. A soldier leaned out, waving. "You have 30 seconds." The group sprinted toward it, the infected not far behind. One by one, they leapt aboard. Jonas was last, firing until his clip emptied, then diving in as the horde closed in. The chopper lifted. Beneath them, Haven burned. The man in black stood at its center, watching them ascend. He didn't chase. He only watched. Then, slowly, he raised his arms again, and behind him, thousands of undead moved as one. The helicopter flew low over the ruined landscape, its blade slicing through the early morning mist. Inside, the survivors sat in silence, too exhausted to speak, too shocked to feel relief. Rhea clutched the edge of her seat, her knuckles white. Her eyes scanned the receding horizon where Outpost Haven had once stood. "It's gone," she whispered. Beside her, Jonas stared blankly at the floor. Sienna held Twitch tightly in her arms, the child asleep despite everything. Eve leaned against the wall, her face smeared with ash and blood. No one knew what to say. Until the pilot broke the silence. Approaching secondary refuge, Grid Point Zulu 9. Prepare for cold entry. It's remote. They landed in a clearing surrounded by snow-covered trees. The cold was sharp and sudden, biting through torn clothes and thin jackets. A camouflaged hangar door slid open as the chopper touched down, revealing a small group of soldiers waving them in. They were led into a decontamination corridor, sprayed, scanned, and questioned before being allowed through a reinforced steel door. What lay beyond felt like a mirage. Lights. Heat. Walls lined with food, gear, working radios. Children. Elders. Soldiers. Scientists. Maybe 30 or 40 people. Survivors. "This is Fort Salas," the commanding officer said. "Our last working stronghold in the region. We picked up your distress signal and rerouted the evac chopper from Sector 12. You made it." Rhea nodded. "For now." Later, in the infirmary, Dr. Maya Kessler treated Jonas' burns and checked Twitch's vitals. She looked over at Sienna and smiled warmly. "Your son's a fighter. No signs of infection. He's lucky." Sienna exhaled, tears finally spilling. "Not luck," she whispered. "A lot of people died to keep him alive." In the strategy room, Rhea met with the fort's command staff. Digital maps lit up the walls, showing dead zones in red and possible safe corridors in green. One blinking icon showed a large, slow-moving mass, marked, Horde Alpha. "It's heading northeast," said Captain DeWitt. "If they follow the mountain pass, we've got less than 5 days before it reaches Salas." Rhea's jaw tightened. "And if it's led by him, the one in black, 5 days is generous." That night, the survivors tried to rest. Fort Salas was warm, secure, and stocked, but the walls still felt thin. Eve stood outside the barracks, staring at the snow drifting from the sky. Malik joined her. "Hard to believe places like this still exist." "Harder to believe they'll last much longer," she replied. Malik looked up. "We need to do more than run." She met his gaze. "We need to hit back." The next morning, Rhea called a meeting with the senior staff and survivors from Haven. "We can't just wait for the horde to arrive," she said. "We've seen how they move. How they learn. How they coordinate. This is no longer just a disease, it's a war. And we need to start treating it like one." DeWitt frowned. "You're suggesting we engage them head-on? In the wild?" "I'm suggesting we cripple their command," Rhea said. "Cut the head. Disrupt the hive." She tapped on the screen, zooming in on a canyon south of the mountain path. "Our recon team picked up strange activity here. Thermal signatures that don't match typical infected patterns. If that thing, the one in black, is leading them, he might be hiding there." Eve nodded. "We go in, take out their leader, and scatter the horde before it hits Salas." DeWitt hesitated. "It's a suicide mission." "So was holding Haven," Jonas said. But we did it. Long enough to save lives. We'll do it again. Later that day, a small team assembled: Rhea, Eve, Jonas, Malik, and 2 Fort Salas scouts, Reed and Cato. Armed with advanced weaponry, drones, and winter gear, they boarded a transport and set out into the mountains. As the vehicle rolled through the icy terrain, Sienna watched from the fortress gate, holding Twitch's hand. "Will they come back?" the boy asked. She looked down at him, then back toward the distant ridges. "I think they'll try." The transport stopped at the edge of a ravine, snow whipping through the trees. From here, they'd have to go on foot. The signal tracking the thermal anomaly was getting stronger. Whatever was down there, it was close. They climbed down the jagged slope slowly, using ropes and pitons. Reed pointed at the ridge ahead. There, movement. They all froze. Between the trees, a figure stood still in the snow. Not moving. Watching. Jonas raised his scope. "It's him. The man in black." But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, rising slowly from the snow, dozens of infected emerged, silent, coordinated, waiting for the signal. Rhea's hand tightened around her rifle. They knew we were coming. The snow fell harder, blinding and cold. Visibility dropped by the second. But through the flurries, Rhea could still see him, the man in black, standing among the infected like a phantom carved from shadow. He raised one pale, gloved hand. The horde surged forward. "Fall back!" Rhea shouted. Jonas fired the first shot, dropping a runner mid-sprint. Reed and Cato unleashed suppressive fire, but it barely slowed the tide. The undead were faster now, smarter. They moved like a unit. No mindless charge, no scattered chaos. Every step was controlled, deadly. "They're flanking!" Eve shouted from the right. Malik lobbed a frag grenade toward the front line, and snow, limbs, and black ichor exploded into the air. The team scrambled up a ridge, slipping on ice and rocks, using trees for cover. Rhea laid down fire until her magazine clicked empty, then switched without pause. "We can't outrun them forever," Jonas yelled. "We're not going to," Rhea answered. "We draw them into the canyon." At Fort Salas, Sienna watched the blip on the screen, her friends, her fighters, inch closer to the center of the ravine. She paced beside Dr. Kessler in the control room. "What happens if they fail?" Sienna asked. Kessler didn't answer right away. "If they fail, then Fort Salas falls with them." Sienna stared at the blinking lights. "Then they won't fail." In the canyon, the team regrouped behind jagged boulders. "We're near the drone-marked thermal point," Malik said, checking his scanner. "Readings are surging. There's a massive power signature down there, like a reactor." "Buried." Jonas frowned. "You're saying they've built something?" "Or they've grown it," Eve said darkly. Rhea peered around the boulder. "It's a trap. That's why he let us see him, he wanted us here. Then we turn the trap around," she added. "We draw them in, and bury them." Cato gestured behind them. "There's a natural ice shelf above the canyon. Enough C4 and we could collapse half the ravine." Reed grinned. "Then let's make some noise." While Malik and Cato climbed the ridge to set charges, the others held the line below. The undead came in waves now, some fast, others dragging twisted limbs, but all of them with those glassy, focused eyes. Not dead. Not alive. Something worse. Jonas dropped 3 in a row with precise shots. Eve slashed one that got too close with her combat blade, blood spraying across her scarf. Rhea fought with brutal efficiency, her movements fueled by rage more than training. Amid the chaos, they saw him again, the man in black, now standing on a higher ledge, arms still folded. Watching. Always watching. Why doesn't he attack? Eve muttered. He doesn't need to, Rhea said. Not until he's ready. Above, Malik planted the last explosive and gave the thumbs up. Charges set. Remote triggers live. Kato checked his rifle. Then we lead the dance. They rejoined the others, diving into the narrow trench that led out of the kill zone. Now! Rhea shouted. They ran. Behind them, the horde followed like a tsunami of rot and bone. Just as the front ranks crossed into the canyon's heart, Malik hit the trigger. Boom! A rumble tore through the mountains. The ice shelf shattered, and a wall of snow and debris collapsed downward, burying the dead in a roaring avalanche. Dust and silence followed. For a moment, nothing moved. Then Jonas raised his head, coughing. We did it? Rhea scanned the rubble. We slowed them. Maybe even crushed half the horde. But he's not there, Eve said, scanning the ridge where the man in black had stood. He was gone. Back at Fort Salas, cheers erupted as the satellite feed confirmed the collapse. But Sienna didn't celebrate. She stared at the screen, watching the heat signatures fade, except for one. A single, glowing red dot stood still in the middle of the devastation. It didn't move. Didn't retreat. Didn't die. That night, Rhea sat at the edge of camp, snow sticking to her jacket. We hit them harder than we ever have, Malik said, sitting beside her. And he's still out there, she replied. Malik nodded. Yeah. Eve approached, holding a scavenged data drive. I pulled this from a transmitter buried in the canyon. Looks like they were sending signals, coded ones. We'll need Kessler to decrypt it. Jonas joined them, shivering under a blanket. We bought time for Salas. But that thing, it's learning. Next time, it'll be worse. Rhea stood up. Then next time, we won't be running. She looked out into the mountains. We'll hunt him. We end this. Inside the fortified war room of Fort Salas, the air was thick with tension. Dr. Kessler hunched over a glowing terminal, her fingers racing across the keyboard. Rhea stood nearby with Eve, Malik, and Jonas watching the screen. A single data drive, salvaged from the canyon ambush, was now their only lead. Kessler's eyes narrowed. This isn't a signal to the infected. It's a response. To what? Rhea asked. She tapped a blinking segment of code. This isn't one-way communication. This thing was talking to something underground. Malik leaned closer. You're saying it's not just a field commander, he's connected to something deeper? Kessler nodded grimly. Whatever's out there, he's not the origin. He's a conduit. Rhea exchanged a glance with Eve. Then it's not over. That canyon collapse didn't stop him because he's not the core. We were chasing the wrong end. And now? Jonas asked. Kessler pointed to the signal logs. The pulse came from beneath a glacier ridge southeast of here. I believe there's something buried in the ice, transmitting. Possibly a hive intelligence or a lab, pre-outbreak, maybe military. Then that's where we go, Rhea said. The team set out at dawn. Rhea, Eve, Jonas, Malik, and Reed led a unit of Salas scouts toward the frozen sector, Glacier Zone 17. The storm had cleared, revealing a brutal, stark world of endless white. It was beautiful, in a deadly kind of way. As they neared the coordinates, Jonas spotted something. Tracks. But not human. Eve knelt beside them. They're deep, heavy. Could be transport treads. But there's no sign of fuel leakage, no heat prints. Autonomous? Malik guessed. The snow gave way to a buried entrance, a broken steel hatch torn upward, like something had clawed its way out. Reed scanned the ice walls. There's something under us. Caverns, maybe tunnels. Rhea adjusted her rifle. Then we go in. Quiet. No mistakes. The descent into the ice tunnel was silent and suffocating. Their boots crunched through frozen corridors laced with jagged frost. Broken lights flickered overhead. Wires dangled like spider webs. Old signs marked in red warned. Biohazard Zone, Level 5 Containment. Authorized personnel only. Jonas whispered, this was a lab. Eve pointed at a shattered window. Inside, frozen corpses still wore lab coats, faces twisted in horror, mouths open in silent screams. Then came the noise. A low hum. Mechanical. Pulsing through the walls. They followed it to a massive chamber, lined with pods, half of them broken open. In the center, a cylindrical tower pulsed with blue light. Kessler's voice crackled through their comms. Are you seeing this? We are, Rhea replied. And it's worse than we thought. Kessler's tone shifted. That's not a lab reactor. That's a neural amplifier. Designed to boost mental waves, or link brains. This was a military AI program. Malik's eyes widened. You're saying they were trying to control the infected? No, Kessler corrected. They were trying to control the virus itself. Eve approached a console beside the amplifier. It's active. Minimal power, but still broadcasting. Cut it, Rhea ordered. Eve hesitated. If I do, it might trigger a failsafe. Jonas lifted his rifle. And if we don't, we're just letting it grow. As Eve reached for the terminal, the air changed. The hum became a shriek. From the shadows behind the pods, they came. Not zombies, not exactly, but something new. Taller. Faster. Armored in bone-like plating, with glowing veins under pale skin. The failed experiments. The first hybrids. They didn't groan. They screamed. Contact. Reed shouted. Gunfire erupted. Eve dove to the console, wires sparking around her. Malik threw a flare, blinding two of the creatures. Jonas emptied his mag into one charging the flank, but it kept moving until Rhea drove a blade into its eye. Cut the damn signal. Rhea yelled. Eve slammed her palm on the kill switch. The amplifier exploded in a burst of blue energy. The hybrids froze, just for a second, before convulsing violently and dropping. Silence returned. Breathing heavy, the team stood amid scorched wires and twitching corpses. Above ground, Kessler stared at the monitors. The signal is gone. Sienna, holding Twitch, leaned in. Does that mean it's over? Kessler exhaled. No. But we just cut the cord. Back in the ruined lab, Rhea examined the shattered amplifier core. A piece of it was still pulsing, weak, but active. We'll bring this back, she said. Whatever this thing was trying to do, it failed here. But what if there are more? Malik nodded. We killed the signal. But not the source. Eve looked at the darkness around them. Something made him. The man in black. Something gave him purpose. Jonas checked the bodies of the hybrids. Then we need to know what, before it finishes whatever it started. Rhea looked at her team. Wounded. Tired. But alive. This is no longer about survival, she said. It's about taking back the world. The snowstorm returned just as Rhea's team reached Fort Salas. Their bodies were bruised, bloodied, and frozen, but they were alive. Behind them, the destroyed neural amplifier and shattered hybrid corpses marked a victory. But a hollow one. Because none of them believed it was truly over. Inside the war room, Sienna greeted them with tight hugs and relief barely contained. Twitch barked once before curling up near the fire. We've decoded more of the drive, Kessler announced, wasting no time. The amplifier in the glacier was one of 3. Rhea blinked. 3? The virus was part of a global military contingency. The infected weren't supposed to be mindless. They were meant to be controlled. That man in black, you called him the commander? He was one of their final prototypes. A weapon given just enough will. Jonas paced behind her. So he wasn't leading them. He was them. Kessler nodded. A living nerve center. A human mind hijacked by AI. We believe the final amplifier, the central one, is still active, and he's heading for it. Eve leaned forward. Where? Kessler pulled up the map. Here. Deep in the ruins of Anchorage. An underground base that never officially existed. A chill passed through the room. Malik grinned grimly. Then that's where we go. 3 days later, they stood on a snow-covered overlook, staring at the buried skeleton of a dead city. Anchorage. Once a beacon of civilization. Now, only frozen skyscrapers and shattered highways marked its bones. From the distance, the ruins were silent. But through binoculars, Rhea saw the movement, dozens, maybe hundreds, of infected, all marching in unison toward the city center. There, Eve said, pointing. That's the access point. Jonas raised his weapon. We make our stand now. The battle began at dusk. The survivors split into 3 fire teams, Rhea leading Alpha, Eve leading Bravo, and Malik with Charlie. The entrance to the base was hidden beneath a crumbled hotel. As they broke through rusted steel and frozen debris, the commander emerged from the smoke, dressed in black, eyes glowing faintly beneath a cracked helmet. You were never supposed to last this long, he said, voice distorted, more machine than man. Rhea aimed her rifle. We were never supposed to die either. The horde charged. Bravo and Charlie held the outer perimeter, unloading round after round into the advancing undead. Inside, Rhea, Eve, and Jonas pushed through the corridors of the facility, moving fast, checking corners, planting charges. Malik's voice came over the comms. We're being pushed back. Hold your ground, Rhea ordered. Just a few more minutes. They reached the central chamber, a massive underground vault filled with cables and flickering consoles. In the center, a pulsating core towered over them. The final amplifier. Jonas rigged the first charge while Eve covered the door. We'll overload it, he said. Blow the whole thing. No time to escape? Eve asked. Jonas smiled sadly. Maybe not. But it ends here. Negative, Rhea said, grabbing the detonator. You two go. I'll stay. Rhea, Eve protested. But she shoved them toward the exit. That's an order. Jonas hesitated, then nodded. See you on the other side. Outside, Malik and Reed were surrounded. Dozens of infected poured in from every side. Reed fell with a scream, and Malik dragged him behind cover. Where's the blast? He yelled. In the distance, the commander moved through the carnage, untouched. Then. Boom. A blinding blue light erupted from beneath the city. The ground shook violently. Waves of energy surged across the skyline. The infected collapsed instantly, twitching before going still. The commander stopped mid-stride, his body glitching, sparks shooting from his neck. And then, silence. Complete silence. They found her among the rubble. Rhea, alive but barely. Bloodied. Burned. Sienna wept as they carried her back to Fort Salas. Weeks passed. The horde was broken. Whatever the commander had been, whatever the virus had evolved into, it died with the final amplifier. There were still scattered infected across the country, but no longer coordinated. No longer guided. The survivors rebuilt. Fort Salas became a symbol, a place of memory, of courage. Of hope. Jonas helped train new fighters. Eve led missions to rescue scattered groups. Malik took up a permanent post guarding the northern frontier. And Rhea? She healed. Slowly. Quietly. One night, as the stars lit the sky above the rebuilt walls of Salas, Sienna sat beside her. You gave us a future, she said softly. No, Rhea replied, staring at the stars. We took it back. The end.